We did what habitat and populations are, what communities are. We studied in depth what all of the terms that we've done mean. We did the different kinds of populations, the different kind of communities, what make up a community, what makes up a population. Then we had other things like the seashore communities, the field communities. Then we studied what an environment is, what different factors make up an environment, what other factors such as abiotic factors and biotic factors are that make up the environment, how do they affect the environment, how do they affect the living organisms that are living in that specific environment. So this is where we ended yesterday. For today, we're going to be starting off with a new term that we are going to introduce to you, that is symbiosis. So what is symbiosis? Symbiosis, by definition, is the close association between organisms. So what we mean by close association is the relationships between different organisms. Now, of course, when we're studying organisms, we're studying different organisms living in the same habitat. They are going to have different relationships with each other. They might be preys and predators to each other. They might be mutually benefiting from each other. They might be supporting each other in different ways. So there are three types of symbiosis. When we're talking about symbiosis, the first type that comes is mutualism. So mutualism is a type of symbiosis in which both the organisms benefit from each other. So when we're talking about mutualism, we can talk about the relationship between a flower and a bee. So when bees collect nectar from flower, what happens is that they also carry pollen from one flower to another. So the bees, their flowers, they're benefiting because the pollen is being transferred to the other flowers, and the bees are benefiting because they're getting nectar from the flower. So in this way, in this relationship, that is the mutualism, both the organisms are benefiting from each other. So this was one of the examples for your mutualism, your symbiosis, that is your mutualism symbiosis. The second kind of symbiosis is going to be parasitism. So what happens under parasitism is that one of the organism is benefited while the other is harmed. So an example of such type of such type of symbiosis can be your or human beings and the mosquitoes. So what happens is that mosquitoes, they feed on human blood, therefore they're benefited. However, humans, they might get affected, infected by the mosquito, and they might get ill. So the mosquitoes, they are being benefited, whereas the humans, they're being harmed. So this is going to be your parasitism. Now, the third type of symbiosis, when we talk about commensalism, is when one of the organisms is benefited, whereas the other remains unaffected. So the other organism is not going to be benefited, nor is it going to be harmed. So it stays unaffected by whatever relationship is between them. So an example of them is going to be the cattle egrets in cattle. What happens is that when the cattle egret is benefited, because what happens is that the insects in the field are scooped up by the cattle egret. So what happens is that they feed on the cattle egret, they feed on the cattle, but the cattle does not get harmed by that feeding. So in this way, in this commensalism, one of the organism, that is the cattle egret, is benefited. However, there is nothing that is affecting the cattle directly, so it stays unaffected. So it's not harmed and it's not benefited in any way. So this is going to be your commensalism in your symbiosis. So these are the three types of symbiosis that are in the syllabus. They are going to be asking for definitions, for examples, and for the definitions of symbiosis as well. So you should be knowing all of this. Do you have any questions?
No.
All right. So the next thing, moving forward, we have ecology. Now, when we're talking about ecology, there is going to be a lot of different factors that are going to be affecting each other. There's going to be a lot of definitions. Now, what exactly is ecology? When we're talking about ecology, we're talking about different factors such as temperature, rain, soil factors, anything like that. So what happens is that when we're talking about sunlight, for example, we can say that it is cooler under the tree, whereas it's hotter when there are no trees or shade present. So there are different types of organisms which can be found in that specific environment. The organisms that need cool environment are going to be found under the shade of the sun, whereas the organisms that need a hot environment are going to be found directly under the sun. So in ecology, we've got all of these factors going together. So what happens is that both the abiotic and biotic environments interact with each other under ecology. So ecology is going to be the study of all the factors of all the things that we've done up till now in this specific chapter. So when you're talking about ecology, the definition of ecology is going to be the study of the interactions among organisms and between the abiotic and the biotic environments. So the study of the interaction among organisms, which means the relationship between the different organisms, and the relationship between the abiotic and biotic factors of the environment is going to make up your ecology. Now, when we're talking about ecology, there's an ecosystem that is formed when different communities are interacting with each other. So ecosystem is the interaction of different organisms, whereas the ecology is the study of the interaction. So when we're talking about forests, when we're talking about deserts, when we're talking about mountains and rivers, they're all examples of ecosystems. And this is what the study of ecosystem is going to be called ecology. Now, when we're talking about this, we're talking about different communities that are interacting with one another. We're talking about biotic and abiotic factors. They're talking about one that are interacting with one another. They're affecting the environment. They're affecting the living organisms living in there. So ecology is going to be the entire study of the environment around us, the different habitats, the population, the communities, the food chains, the food webs. All of them are going to come under the definition of ecology. Okay, is that understandable? Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, all right. So this is going to be all about this chapter. However, I've got a small exercise for you that I'm giving you some time to do just right now. So you're supposed to